How's it going, everybody? I am not doing a stream today, and for those of you who might not know why, my computer has been kind of out of commission until literally yesterday, and after it got in commission, I have not had a chance to do anything besides just kind of sit here and twiddle my thumbs. I've been in a lot of pain, so it's been very hard to do a stream. So instead, I want to go ahead and give y'all an update on everything going on right now. As far as the computer's concerned, the motherboard and the RAM and the processor were all failing. Those have all been replaced, and the computer has been repaired by my lovely partner, Saki. That's all well and good. We are past that point now. And now we've got to get more into the meat and potatoes of what's been going on behind the scenes. Normally, this type of stuff is reserved for my patrons, and if you are a patron, you've probably already heard everything I'm going to say here. So maybe this is maybe a video you can skip if you are a patron of mine, since you don't really need to watch me talk about things I've already talked about privately on Patreon. Anyway, where we are at right now is I have realized there are a lot of problems with how my lifestyle has been lately. Quite a few, actually. So I got on a kick of not imbibing sugar for maybe about a year or two. And as a result of this, if I consumed any sugar for any amount of time, I would start to get very, very sick. I've since reintroduced sugar into my diet, and I've done so with a very specific reasoning in mind. I've gone on a different diet strategy than I used to. I realized that even with my previous strategy, I was just substituting sugar for other calorie-dense things, and that started to cause me to gain even more weight. I maxed out at about 285, and while I had lost some of that weight during my time going to the gym when I hit it very hard last year, unfortunately, there's only so much exercise can do. Even going to the gym now, I'm not tracking the calories I lose in the gym so much, because it turns out that the calories you lose in the gym, you tend to plateau on. The gym's really good for keeping physically fit and maintaining mental health, but in terms of actually losing weight, exercise doesn't really serve a huge purpose in what you're doing. You can have about 800 calories that are burned from exercise, sure, but ultimately you end up getting hungrier and more tired when you do that, and then as a result you end up consuming more calories. So my current strategy to try to lose the weight that I have gained over the years is instead to just diet and exercise. I know that that sounds super, super simple, but specifically, I've been going on a 1,750 calorie diet where I'm allowed effectively 2 really good meals or 3 decently small meals a day, with maybe a snack in between depending on what it is. An apple, 63 calories, a handful of candies, 140 calories. It just depends on what I'm in the mood for that day and what calories I have to spend on where I'm at. This is very different than what I had been doing previously, because before I had still been eating a lot of fried foods. I had been eating a lot of calorie-dense foods without thinking about how calorie-dense they are. Like, did you know that if you take a couple of potatoes and just cook them in a pan, that's about 250 calories, but if you cook them in oil, you end up doubling that to 500 or 600 calories. It's kind of insane. Now, when you consider the fact that most fast food restaurants are all fried and very greasy, grease is more calorie dense than protein, for instance. For every gram of protein, there are 4 calories. For every gram of carbohydrates, there are 4 calories. For every gram of grease, for every gram of fat, there are 9 calories. There's literally more than double, 1.25 times, or 2.25 times as many calories in just fat in general as not. Now, I'm not super worried about which kinds of fats that I am eating. I'm not going on keto or anything like that. I found out that keto is actually a diet that's really, really hard to maintain. While it is probably the fastest diet for losing weight, like hands down, there is nothing that will shred your fat faster than being on keto. And it's because you change the way your body metabolizes food. Your body needs glucose to survive, and it gets that glucose primarily from sugars, secondarily from carbohydrates, and finally from proteins and fats. When you're on keto, you have to do a lot of exercise to let your body know that it needs to retain its muscles, and then you lose the fat because your body is no longer grabbing carbohydrates and sugars in the body. It doesn't see them anymore, so it then starts consuming the fats in your body. Your body becomes what's called fat adapted as you go into ketosis. This has a few health problems, though. After about 3 to 6 months, certain health issues can come up, and if you want to get into the details of those, you can look up stuff where the keto diet's concerned. There are people who should be on keto more than others, but I'm not here to talk about that. I know that it can be very good at lowering inflammation. It can help a ton with people who have type 2 diabetes, but when it comes to sustainability, for a lot of people, it's a very hard thing to sustain. For instance, if somebody goes on keto for a month and a half, loses a bunch of weight, and then they intake carbs, their body sees that it is getting quick glucose for the first time in a long time, and it will start giving you carb cravings, which while anybody can tell you just resist the carb cravings, that's not really how the human body works. You have a threshold where you start to have literally your willpower get chipped away. Healthy Gamer GG actually has a really good series on this stuff, and his channel is one of the reasons that I've been changing my approach to a lot of the stuff that I've been doing. Whereas before, if my computer was out of commission and I wasn't able to do anything for a set period of time because of that, I would just accept that as a loss and just take a mental health hit and a financial hit as a result. Instead, what I'm doing now is doing these more low-key recorded videos where I'm still giving y'all updates on the news and my takes and everything else, but I'm having a better time of it mentally because I'm not letting myself literally fall into despair and beating myself up for not being able to do a third of my job. Streaming, editing, and, getting videos sent out to y'all. Those are the cornerstones of my job outside of any community stuff that I do and outside of any direct political action that I partake in. Those are the cornerstones of my job. Editing is now being taken over by Cherry again, for those who don't know. There have been some speed bumps where that's concerned, and we're trying to figure out those right now. Now that I've got Black Cat Briar doing my thumbnails and Cherry doing my editing, there's a lot of people with segmented jobs in terms of what my singular job is. So I've got to try to figure out a way to streamline things for the both of them, and as a result, streamline things for me afterwards. So that's taking a little bit of time. If you've seen videos go up without a thumbnail, and then they get a thumbnail a little later, or they go up with a placeholder thumbnail, that's basically a result of that. There's no shade on either Cherry or Micah here. This is entirely a problem of me, the YouTuber, to try to solve between what is now re-becoming my editing team. So, past that, back to the weight loss stuff, what I have found is that the calorie deficit idea works a lot better for me than other diets. I've lost 12 pounds in the 3 or 4 weeks that I've been doing calorie deficit stuff, and while I have been going to the gym and exercising, and that's been a part of that weight loss, most of that, and a good bit of it is water weight, I'm not gonna lie, but most of that has been just from restricting my calories. There are a couple days where I go over, but I noticed when I looked at the stuff that I would eat before, like I would go to Taco Mac and get an appetizer plate of mozzarella sticks, eat maybe 3 of those, and then I would get wings and tater tots, and the tater tots is like 500 calories, and the wings are like 80 calories a wing, and, you add it all together, and I was consuming about 1,500 to 2,000 calories a meal. Now I'm not doing that anymore. Now my meals look the same amount of food for the most part, but I've chosen better options in those. And sometimes those better options are more expensive, but that doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that the food that I'm consuming is healthier, it's higher in fiber, it keeps me full longer, and there's some other aspects of my diet that I had not been considering that I want to talk about as well for maybe any of you who struggle with diet stuff. And for that, I've got this in my hand right here. This is my thermos. Y'all have seen me drink from it on stream for years. I've had the same one for a very, very long time. So most of the time, this thermos had Diet Dr. Pepper in it. That was basically the only thing that I would drink, for the most part, every day. Diet Coke if the Diet Dr. Pepper wasn't available. And I learned a few things about diet sodas that have turned me off of them in certain scenarios. So What I mean by that is I still think soda tastes way better with a meal. I like washing meals down with soda. But I learned something about how aspartame and by extension a lot of artificial sweeteners work in the body. So artificial sweeteners trigger the body's insulin response. And because these artificial sweeteners trigger your insulin response, and then have nothing to metabolize, your body can then start making you crave sweets as a result of getting a sweet hit and not actually getting the sugar that your body expected to have from that sweet hit. This means that if you are consuming a lot of diet sodas, you'll actually end up consuming more food as well. They literally make you more snackish. They help trigger that salivating response for food. Again, this makes them pair really well with a meal because it quite literally makes the meal more enjoyable, for me anyway, and they are 0 calories, so there is that. While I know there are some negative effects to aspartame as well, I'm not as concerned about those in this particular context. My concern is when it comes to diet. I'd been avoiding water, like literally just avoiding water, straight water, for the longest time, mostly because I hated the taste. And I'm still not the most keen on the taste of regular water, and giving water artificial flavorings has all the same problems that diet soda is. Chemically, you're doing all the same things, and it kind of defeats the purpose there. But what I found is that if I'm really hungry and I'm just consuming a lot of water, unlike what happened with the diet soda, where it just made me hungrier, the water seems to actually satiate me. You can get water bloated and not feel hungry for any food because the water is quite literally taking up all of that space in your stomach. It also obviously helps you digest your food better. Water, along with water-soluble fiber, does wonders for cleaning out your digestive tract, but that's, again, not really the point here. I'm not talking about gut health primarily, though if we're talking about artificial sweeteners, there's lots of stuff to get in where gut health's concerned. I mainly want to talk about how this has helped a ton. Restricting my calories by having mostly home-cooked meals that I've made myself, that I can measure the ingredients that have gone in. Like today I had a chicken Alfredo that I made with cottage cheese that was 800 calories, but it was a very thick and literally huge meal. I food prepped about 6 packages of that. I've got about 3 packages of Chipotle steak over penne. I've got a bunch of packages of curry over rice. I've got some packages of pan-seared, fast food Chinese style pork over white rice. All of these dishes are about 500 to 800 calories each, so you can eat one of them every meal and balance out to about 2,000 calories or under when you're, factoring in that you're having a lower calorie one for breakfast and a higher calorie one later in the day or midday. You pick what you do. But restricting calories, turns out, has been way easier than I thought. It was just kind of a matter of habit. And that brings me to another thing. I think I'm coming to accept that while I've not been diagnosed with ADHD, I definitely have some form of it. There's no real way around it. When I look at how I operate around the world, when I look at the way that I have to deal with tasks in my day-to-day life, it occurs to me more and more that I've developed a lot of coping mechanisms for ADHD symptoms, maybe even autism. I don't know. I have no diagnosis, and I'm a very firm believer that it's very hard to be an advocate on my own part saying I have these things without a diagnosis that I can't afford to begin with, but you understand where I'm at there. Without a doctor telling me that I have these things, it's hard for me to say I have them. But I am willing to accept that I have enough of the symptoms of these things that I have to take into account that likelihood in my day-to-day life. One of the ways I'd been dealing with this was this right here. This is just a Notepads document on my phone, and I noticed that I would get very bad executive dysfunction. I would wake up in the morning, and I would be unable to get out of my bed because there were so many things that needed to be done in the day, and this would lead to me doom scrolling on my phone, sometimes for 3 hours. Sometimes I would even refuse to get up and go to the bathroom because I would rather just sit in the bed, and if sleep retook me, then sleep retook me, as unhealthy as that may be. So my first coping mechanism I developed for this was playing music. If I couldn't get up in the morning, I would create a ritual for myself. Get up, turn on music, make the bed. Get up, turn on music, make the bed. It was enough to get me out of bed and start me being productive. But it wasn't necessarily enough to make me a productive person throughout the day. That is where I started taking lists down. And I've talked about this in other videos as well. I'm sorry my nose is itchy. I'm allergic to my own animals. What can I say? But I talked about this in other videos where I think that more people should make lists because it gives you a idea of what you're going to be doing in your day. And the more often you make lists, the better of an idea you get of how long each task you have takes to do. For instance, on this one, I have get dressed as the first thing in my day. That can take about 2 seconds. I've gotten rid of most of my clothes that are different than, a standard shirt like this, an overshirt like this, and either some shorts or some dress pants so that I could dress quicker. Wipe down my office. Okay, that's super easy. Just get a wet paper towel and clean the office up. That may take about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much dust and animal hair has settled in different places. Make stream graphics. This would be something that I would be doing if that was a task that I needed to do right now. I've obviously completed this one because I have stream graphics set up for all of my different things, so this is an older list. Get food. Now, nowadays, I don't have that as a list item. Usually I have that as cook food and meal prep, something more specific than just get food. After that, I've got, stream games, stream topics, stream Magic the Gathering video for back when I used to stream doing my Magic the Gathering content instead of just doing that all as an edited thing. And then, of course, edit everything is the final thing there. It's not the most robust list, but it was enough to get me doing things, and I've been making lists ever since there. They're no longer on this app for me anymore. That's why this is an old list. Now I've got a Discord server that me and Saki are in that I put my lists in so that she also knows the things that I plan on doing throughout the day. And it also helps if there are things that we both need to be doing, like taking out the trash is probably going to be some form of a team effort. Taking care of the dishes is probably going to be a me thing. Taking care of the laundry is going to be a team effort. Taking care of the floor is probably going to be her thing. Just depends on where we are at. But I'll put down that those are the things that need to be done in the day so we can tackle them as a team, or I can tackle the ones that are for me alone, on my own. And between those two things, it's led to me being more productive. It's why I'm able to semi-consistently get to my stream and also get to my Magic the Gathering content. It has, however, made sure that streams are shorter. If you guys have noticed, when I do streams, they're usually 2 to 4 hours now, whereas they used to be about 6 to 8 hours. And while I do love the vibe of my older 6 to 8 hour streams, where we would mix in more gameplay and all kinds of stuff, when it comes to my day's productivity, there's other things that I have to do on top of the stream. And doing these lists helped me realize that. It stopped me from doing a stream until 3 or 4 in the morning and then suddenly realizing, oh, shit, I lost track of time. I've been here. A lot of that comes down to streams having been an escape mechanism for me for the longest time. But again, that's a different conversation entirely. So in terms of balance for my life, I've done a lot of dieting stuff. I've worked in a lot more exercise in the mornings, going to the gym for about 30 minutes a day, doing high intensity workouts, I need to get better at doing cardio, but it's just much more boring for me, so I'm trying. And then obviously food prep. There's probably about a week's worth of food prep inside my freezer right now, along with some whipped coffee that Saki can use as a dessert piece whenever she wants. So that takes my productivity into account, that takes my diet into account, but where are we at right now in terms of mental health? Well, I'm going to be honest, there have been a few saviors where my mental health is concerned. Once upon a time, my mental health savior was literally League of Legends. I've talked about this on stream before, and I'll probably end up talking about it a few more times the older I get, but I was in a very bad state when I lost my job, something around 7, 8, 9 years ago, and the only thing that kept me stable was having something to occupy my mind in between breakdowns. For that, I played a lot of League of Legends, and I primarily played it because I had friends who I met who played it, and being able to play that game with those friends made me a more functional human being for the times that I was playing, at the very least. I eventually got a job at McDonald's and played League any time I had off time between that job and everything else. And eventually, though, I would stop playing League because I realized that it wasn't really that game so much that was saving my mental health. It was the fact that something was occupying my mind. That was all it was. This was evidenced by the fact that my depression would still get pretty bad if I was playing League alone as opposed to with friends. So I ended up quitting playing League. I may return to it every now and again, but for the most part, I don't really plan on doing so, as much as I have enjoyed that game for the longest time. I don't think I'll ever find myself being a regular League player ever again. Instead, what I've found is I like doing things that are very community-based. And when I want to play a game by myself, I don't want to play an online game like League. I want to catch up on games that I've denied myself for a long time. And maybe this idea will speak to you if you've ever been on a hyper budget, but when I was younger, I played a lot of World of Warcraft. I still play World of Warcraft to varying degrees, but one of the main reasons that I played it back then, aside from the fact that I was a hopelessly addicted kid, was, as far as I was concerned, it was cheaper to play World of Warcraft, mostly because my parents were affording the subscription for me, 12 years ago, but it was cheaper to just play World of Warcraft than it was to try to find other video games to play. Every now and again, something would come out that I really did want to play, but for the longest time, I substituted most of my gaming time with just playing an online game, whether it be WoW or League or what have you. And this led to me missing almost entire generations of games that I really should have been able to sit down and play. I stopped having games as a hobby and started having games as an escape mechanism above all else. I stopped enjoying games and started enjoying what games were a conduit for: spending time with friends, escaping from reality, all that other fun stuff. And I basically abandoned any previous ways that I had engaged in community. This was something that I figured out while vanilla World of Warcraft was still the primary way to play WoW Classic. For those who don't know, the raiding scene, or the end game of those games, the second half of the MMO, if you will, involves a lot of raids. And that is basically you go into a dungeon with a group of 25 to 40 people, and you try to tackle a variety of bosses and get loot so that you can power up your character so that it's easier to do the current raid, or you can move on to the next raid. The raiding scene's end game is to be able to finally stop playing World of Warcraft after all. That doesn't really happen for anybody, but that is kind of the joke of what it ends up being. And what I found was that when I was a kid, Warcraft was a social thing for me. I had a lot of friends on it that played, because I didn't get to raid all that much. Mostly because it was literally after my bedtime that I was allowed to, that my guild raided. So I spent most of my time in dungeons, which are 5-man endeavors, which means you spend a lot of time talking with people, getting to know them, figuring out, what's going on in their personal lives, how their kids are doing. But when you're in a 40-man raid, there's a little bit of time for chit-chat amongst the most vocal people, but for the most part, the name of the game is shut up and listen to the guild officers as they tell you what your class is supposed to be doing. Paladins, make sure that you're getting rid of these buffs. Hi, honey. Paladins, make sure you're getting rid of these buffs. Mages, make sure you're getting rid of this stuff. And focus on that. The problem I ran into was that I was spending time with 40 people, and all of my ability to socialize was going out the window because I was in a group of 40 people, not speaking really to any of them. And that's a very isolating experience. And I didn't recognize it as one until, I was old enough for the wonder of the raiding scene to die down and me to kind of realize, oh, this is what I was going for. So if I was raiding with people that I particularly cared about, it could be more fun for me. But if I was just raiding with the guild, it was less fun, and mostly because there were just too many people. I used to be a huge critic of the downsizing of raiding for WoW and other MMOs, but in hindsight, having that many people in a raid doesn't really work long term. It's easy for guilds to fracture, and the experience between having a 20-man raid and a 40-man raid is just vastly improved by having the smaller raid. The only difference is the size. The sheer scope and scale is wonderful, but I ended up replacing World of Warcraft raiding for the longest time with going to Friday Night Magic, because our raids were done on Friday night. But my local card shop did its draft tournaments on Friday night, and I didn't have a lot of Magic cards, so draft was the only real way I had to play with anybody anyway. And I found that my mental health improved greatly by supplementing my lacking social sphere with going to a card shop. And so I've done this song and dance before. I've had a video where I've talked about, going to a card shop, touching grass, going to meet friends. I don't want to rehash all that now. I mainly bring this up because that's kind of a running theme of this whole video. When I started my attempt at dieting, I started by removing what I thought was the culprit, the sugar. And then I found out that it was the calories that were the culprit, and I had been unhealthily engaging in taking in too many calories because I wasn't having the sugar, so everything was fine. I was able to produce a lot of content as a YouTuber when I was using YouTube as an escape mechanism for my own mental health, which made it a thing that could not be done long term. I didn't have a healthier relationship with content creation. I had a very unhealthy, almost addicted relationship with content creation. And so that had to change. And then when it came to gaming, I gave up being able to engage in single-player experiences that I loved, and I literally gave up having a social circle because I wanted to play a particular kind of game that I could trick myself into thinking I had a social circle in, but I really didn't. Because 40 people in a group, you're a number, and your job is to make sure the numbers of the raid as a whole are increased, not spend time with your friends. Ideally, you make friends within that guild, and plenty of people have made friends within their guilds, even at 40-man raiding parties. But I found that it ended up being a very isolating experience, despite having a lot of respect for my guild master at the time, and having a lot of respect for a lot of the guild officers that I had in that guild. So I guess the thing that I want to conclude this whole little rant with is, if you feel like there's a problem in your life, do your best to make sure that the thing you're doing to solve that problem is actually a healthy mechanism. Don't play something because it's the thing that's occupying your brain. Do it because it's something you want to do. The thing you want to do will occupy your brain just as well as whatever the mindless, addictive nonsense you've plugged into your phone is doing right now anyway. But you'll feel a lot more fulfilled when you choose the one that involves spending time with your friends, involves going outside, involves gaining new experiences instead of just repeating old ones because it's comfortable. So just take care of yourselves. I didn't do a good job of it for the longest time, and I'm trying to get better at that between my mental health and my diet and my ability to socialize. So that's about that. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. And as always, everyone, insert end of video time. Well, that's not how I'm supposed to say that. That's how you can tell I'm tired. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full-time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full-time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.